Hello, in today's new edition of Baku Network, we are discussing Germany. And the topic of today's discussion is the biggest flaws of German domestic and foreign policy. And I have my colleagues here joining us to discuss this very important topic and which relates to Germany. Here with me, Ms. Sevil Mikayilova, member of Azerbaijani Parliament. And we have also a distinguished guest joining us from Germany, from Berlin, Mr. Harald Weil. He's a German politician and also he is the member of Bundestag, the German parliament, and he represents the state of North Rhine-Westphalia. So let's start with you, Mr. Harald Weil. Currently, we are seeing very intensive and interesting developments taking place in German domestic and foreign policy. And of course, as a member of Germany Parliament, we would be very pleased to hear your thoughts about the development, the situation that is going on in Germany. We are following very closely here in Azerbaijan, in the South Caucasus, German domestic and foreign policy, because Germany is one of the biggest economies of the world, the biggest economy of the European Union. So whatever decisions are taken in Germany, be it domestic or foreign policy, immediately affects the global affairs. And of course, as an immediate neighborhood, the Southern Caucasus and also the Azerbaijan is affected by the decisions taken in Germany by the European Union. As an important and reliable partner of European Union and also of course Germany, we are very interested to hear your thoughts. So would you please elaborate what's currently the topics, high topics high on your agenda, please?
Yes, thank you very much. The biggest economy in the European Union, so to speak, and on the Eurasian continent, besides China, second biggest economy, so to speak, on the Eurasian continent, it depends heavily on the input. Our industrial society, sophisticated, even the most sophisticated industrial society, depends on the energy input, which was delivered for decades. Cheap and more or less ecological, more illogical than the alternatives, by the Russian gas, for instance, and the Russian oil, also by the Chinese goods, consumer goods, etc. And this relation, this input has diminished. We need a quantity of energy which we cannot get by the alternative ways, say American liquefied natural gas, which is on the run now and cannot 100% substitute the loads, the tons of Russian natural gas, non-liquefied, via Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines, which became sabotaged in September last year. That led to a quadrupling of the prices per unit of the gas, and sometimes to the sevenfold energy bill coming to German enterprises, coming to German households, and that constitutes a big problem. And how the investigation runs is more or less secretly. It's kept as a secret. What if not the Russians sabotage their own pipeline, which is very unlikely? What if one or more of our nice allies have done so? Like Seymour Hersh, the famous article which made his way 1 or 2 days ago, which claims American involvement or authorship. So besides the question who did the deed, who is the perpetrator?
Are you going to discuss and are you going to investigate with your colleagues in the German parliament the developments after, especially the publishing the Seymour Hersh article in the world media? We have seen the repercussions, the consequences. So what is your take on that? How it will lead and how it will affect the situation there?
Yes, as I said, it's kept as a secret by the Attorney General, General Attorney of Germany, and Secret Service, etc. And the statement of the government, well, they cannot tell the whole truth because it might endanger the foreign policy relations of Germany. We will go after that. We were at the start, and we will go after it. You can be sure of. Besides all that, there is a technical problem. A decision has to be made to repair Nord Stream 1 and 2, at least one of those, and to get some gas. So that's one side of the story, and the other story is that we have to vary and look out, and the government looks very hard for competitors of Russia. United States delivers its liquefied natural gas, but in a quantity and at a price which is not really really endurable for the German industry, for the households, etc. And we will see how the situation gets tighter and tighter. Besides all that, we have to see that beginning in end of February or March last year, the European Union and Germany and the formerly and now still so-called West declared commercial economic war on Russia and its allies. We are confronted with a declaration of economic war, which leads exactly to the situation like in the hot wars of the last century, that we are cut off from our supplies, that we have substitutes which are not enough and too expensive, and we have to finish the situation. So the peace is a question not only of arms, it's a question of trade, of supplies, export and import, and that has to be revived. And the situation, the escalation cannot go any further. That's the initiative of our days. Yesterday, we introduced a peace plan. Our party, the Alternative for Germany, introduced in the German parliament to the public and our colleagues a peace plan, which is now introduced into the parliamentary process when everybody is against, besides the AfD, everybody is against peace negotiations, then that speaks its own language to the public. It's a terrible situation. We have to find a way out.
Yes, very interesting points that you are raising, because you have talked right about the peace plan that your party has proposed to German parliament. And here, of course, in South Caucasus, in Azerbaijan, we also for decades we have been advocating for peace, for cooperation, and that's why Sevil Hanım, I would like you to elaborate more, because for many years Azerbaijan has called the regional countries, the neighbors, to come to sit on the table to discuss regional cooperation. Of course, the war that we have seen, that we were subjected for 30 years, have devastated the region. But now it is very important, as in the Germany parliament, our colleagues are discussing peace plans. It is above time that we also inform our neighboring countries, I mean world community, international community, that we also need peace. Azerbaijan has already proposed this peace to neighboring Armenia, and we do hope that Armenia will reciprocate. But unfortunately, we have never seen this, because Azerbaijan, with its resources, with being a reliable partner to the European Union, being a very important contributor to the peace, stability, energy security, but our neighbors, our neighboring countries must appreciate. But unfortunately, we have never seen this reaction from Armenia. Your take on this?
First of all, thank you very much, Mr. Genceriyev, for this invitation and for the opportunity to discuss the issues with our colleague from Germany, and nice to greet you here as well. So we just heard very, very important notes from our German colleague, and it actually gives us to know that we have too many issues to discuss, because actually what the European Union, the whole Europe has faced today is really a very big problem for the European Union. After the war between Russia and Ukraine, actually the European Union was the first economic area who faced big economic problems. Before, we know that they were dependent on Russian gas supplies. Actually, if we see at Germany depends on Russia for its energy supplies. But the matter is that now the European Union has decided to minimize this dependence, but how can the European Union cope with this challenge? Now this is a very important issue to discuss. How can Azerbaijan, from our side, we participate in that? My colleague Tural Bey was very right to say that peace for the continent is very important, because for 30 years the conflict, war in South Caucasus between Azerbaijan and Armenia, you know, actually impeded economic development of the region. Now Azerbaijan has liberated its territory. Our government, Azerbaijan, could restore its sovereignty in the occupied lands. So we fulfilled 4 UN security resolutions. And after this page, so we are now in the process of normalization, and ultimately we believe that the peace that you mentioned actually will lead the next phase of development in the region. I think this peace will benefit the European Union as well. As you know, Azerbaijan is playing a role in diversification of energy supplies to the European Union. We are very active in the eastern part of Europe, and we have launched gas supplies in 2020. We are happy to say that Southern Gas Corridor now supplies gas to your continent. But again, it doesn't mean that the whole continent will get rid of Russian dependency on gas supplies. You just mentioned that you receive LNG supplies from the United States, but we are sure that it is not enough for Germany so to meet all its demand for the fossil fuel. But transition to green economy, green energy, it also has some challenges, we know. You need infrastructure, you need big investments, you need resources. So Azerbaijan actually has started to supply hydrogen to 4 countries, to 3 countries in the European Union, and we are happy to tell about it. But again, what can we do for Germany? This is also on table. As for Germany, we have very good relations as a European country. So Germany and Azerbaijan could establish during the years of independence actually normal relations. And further, we believe that so this economic integration, this economic cooperation can bring dividend to you, to your country and Azerbaijan as well. So we are supplier, you are buyers. But how to do it, I think you need to discuss it at your parliament as well.
Very interesting points. And here I would like to continue your views because Azerbaijan is the biggest economy of the Southern Caucasus. Azerbaijan accounts for more than 75–80% of whole economy of the Caucasus. And by the way, very interesting statistics, Germany and its trade turnover with South Caucasus and 65% of share of Germany's trade turnover with the Southern Caucasus countries comes to Azerbaijan. So 65% belongs to Azerbaijan. Here I would like to hear your views. Can you please elaborate a little bit more about probably Azerbaijan's and Germany's cooperation and partnership, especially in the energy security sphere, because as you have just spoken about the sabotage in the Nord Stream pipelines that negatively affected your country. What about, as Sevil Hanım said, what about developing and expanding energy security and becoming kind of a buyer of Azerbaijani energy in Germany? And we are also providing not only the oil and gas, also green economy, green energy, green energy to European Union, and we are planning to increase these volumes in coming future. So your ideas would be very interested.
Yes, I think doubtlessly in terms of diversification, Azerbaijan will play a bigger role for the German energy supply than in the past. I think that our ongoing negotiations or even contracts made with the exploration of new or old gas fields, and where the question is how to optimize the transportation, etc. And that's one side, but there's also, I think we should not forget one aspect, which may be a little water into the wine, as the saying goes, because the German situation and problem is largely homemade. So the dependency on gas, no matter if Russian or not, was up to 50% because of the climate policy, so-called climate planned economy, climate change, climate salvation, etc. And because the Germans get out of their own coal and even foreign coal, get out of get out of the nuclear power, which played not a big role, but yes, an important role even in Germany. And you get at the same time rid of coal and rid of nuclear. And the more you are depending on gas, let it be Russian or Azerbaijani or gas from all over the world, including United States, or United States first, as always, then it's a boomerang. It's a boomerang effect of your stupid energy and economic policy of the past, and that we are telling our colleagues here, which in all combinations of coalitions, black, conservative, socials, liberals, Greens, etc., they all followed the wrong trail, getting out at the same time from coal, nuclear dependency on gas, and that's broken now. So even if we have substitutes for the gas and continue with 50 plus minus 50% gas share and the energy supply, there has to be a revival of nuclear power. That is also an alternative, not only the supplier of gas and oil, etc., but a new positioning towards nuclear policy. And that's totally chaotic in Germany. It's totally run by ideologues, the ideologies of the Green Party and the Green issue, which also started from the United States. Remember Al Gore in 2000s. It's a pity that he didn't become this president of the United States. I think we would not have this trouble. We wouldn't have had the George Bush Middle East trouble, and we wouldn't have this climate terror trouble. So it's two flies with one stick.
Yes, I see.
So,
please.
That's the alternative. That's the problem. There's largely homemade problematic involved in this, and we depend on a new foreign energy policy in terms of economic and energy, etc., as input factors for our economy, but also a revitalization and de-ideologization of our great climate policy, which everything is about.
I see. Mr. Vale, maybe you can also share your views about the situation concerning the Russia-Ukrainian war, because German Chancellor just today or yesterday declared that Germany is going to send its Leopard tanks to Ukraine. And of course, I would be interested to hear your views about the decision that your government has taken. So how you see the development concerning Germany providing more and more equipment to Ukraine, and what's your position and what's your party's position on the Russian-Ukrainian war? Of course, as Azerbaijan, just let me say that we are recognizing the territorial sovereignty and independence of all countries, and we would like to see this conflict resolved by diplomatic, peaceful means, because as a country we have suffered from the devastating consequences of the war and aggression in the South Caucasus. So that's why it's very pity, and we are very of course disappointed seeing people are dying in war, because Russia and Ukraine, these are neighbors to Azerbaijan. We would like to see this war to be resolved as soon as possible by peaceful means, by diplomatic means.
Well, that's actually the delivering tanks, modern tanks to Ukraine. It doesn't seem as the right step into the right direction of diplomacy. It rather looks like fueling the war. Well, as the sayings or the logic may go, If Russia stops the war is over. If Russia stops to fight, so they say, certain people say, and if Ukraine stops to fight, it's the end of Ukraine. Well, I think there has to be a peace treaty installed. The sooner, the better, and all the steps leading to fueling of the war. One has to refrain from this kind of escalation, and all steps. There are 5 steps going into direction more of the same: war, arms, and after the tanks comes the fighter planes, comes the submarines, comes the UFOs, the flying saucers, perhaps. Yeah, the road to peace leads via diplomacy, and there are no serious steps undertaken since April last year. And it's a quite sinister story, not as and only of the Russians, but of Western diplomacy, the role Mr. Johnson played in April, the ongoing peace in the first weeks of the war. The peace talks, or the preliminary peace talks, that were interrupted. There was 1 person killed. It's a very, very sinister story told about Western diplomacy and policy, as well as the Russians. And who makes the first step? And it has to be synchronized steps to stop the fighting, to do retreat of the troops or not, but stopping the fighting, start to negotiate, repeating elections under OSCE and UN mandate, etc. Those are the necessary steps to peace. And what we've seen in the last, not only the last 10 months, but even before, those declarations of diverse parties, even in Ukraine, well, we reconquer Crimea, we will do this or that. It was not the question of diplomacy and the way of diplomacy and peace eagerness before 24th February. And that has to be compensated now. Both sides have, with the help of the big friends, United States, to walk synchronically in the right and same direction.
And also, Mr. Weil, very interesting article I have read recently. Mr. Friedman, who is a very famous founder of the think tank and intelligence agency, which is called Stratfor, and very famous in the United States. And Mr. Friedman, in one of his interviews, said that it is in the interests of the United States not to allow Germany and Russia cooperate closely, because it creates a danger and it against of the interest of the United States. So I just would like to you to explain us what are the challenges and disadvantages of, if we can say, the possible cooperation between Germany and Russia, the 2 big powers in our region. And as Mr. Friedman sees that more close cooperation between Germany and Russia is against the interests of the West, the United States, and how you see it, what are the main dangerous aspects according to Friedman that he sees and elaborates, and what would be your arguments against of this idea?
I think firstly we have to acknowledge that it is an outspoken and terrible truth, which is not only, which Mr. Friedman uttered, which is not only brand new or 5 or 10 years old, etc., but what is the logic of the last, say, 100 years. When we go back to World War I, we had a situation not unlike our today's problem, because geography did not change, because national interest did not change, because economic dependency on certain inputs on one side, say energy, etc., and finding an output for your goods you are producing. That means foreign markets. Yeah, not only have your own market, your domestic market, which is big, well, sort of big enough for big countries, United States, Russia, China, and within Western Germany, Western Europe, Germany, of course, but where you always want to have a plus. You want to have more than your domestic market, and that wants even the big United States, even big big China and Russia, of course, too, and Germany. That means that all have an interest to open other people's market at one side and to ruin other people's business at the same time. And those kind of win-lose situation, which is displayed by Mr. Friedman's and the logic of which is actually Mackinder, the Earth, the theory, geopolitics, etc., with more than 100 years old, that has to stop. And it's obvious because the talk in United Nations, in Council of Europe, the talk is always about peace and communication and understanding, but the acting and the actual do's and don'ts of diplomacy, of policy, they speak a different language, not only when it comes to war, finally, but what precedes war. That means we have to find back to a sober and clear communication and to the acceptance that the interests and the right to exist for other people and to follow their interests had to be taken into account. Also your neighbors' interests, your neighbors far and near, big and small, etc. And we've lost this path. And there are certain hints that actually not only that the First World War did not really end, and the Second World War can be seen as the prolongation of the whole thing as the 30 Years' War, and we can add the Cold War too, which did obviously not really end in the early 90s. So certain people perhaps have to make one or two steps back. And I think it's not only the Russians where it refers to. And this terrible and clear logic of diplomacy, of economy, of interest, of war and peace, it's a common interest of all people, no matter their race, their religion. And when ideology prevent you from acting enlightened or sober, then it's a terrible thing which has to stop. And I see not only in the East states, authoritarianism, etc., you see it also in the West, at least with the Corona policy worldwide, where you can see little difference between Chinese and United States. In most states of the United States, you had a regime, not to talk about New Zealand and Australia, which were sometimes more authoritarian than the Chinese, yeah. And when that's the West, so the West is not what it used to be, and we have to find, as I said, back to the past we've left. We wasted decade after decade since the 90s. Then came the war on terror, which produced terror itself, domestic and foreign. And I think we have to push the reset button, not only for certain regimes in the East, but worldwide. Reset button back to normal, back to enlightenment, and away from ideology and this confrontation in the style of August 1940.
Mm-hmm. I have one question to our colleagues. You're representing Alternatives Party, and it is very interesting to know your party's visions about Germany's policy in South Caucasus. So how you see the perspectives, how you see the potential, and how you see the use of this potential in the future.
Yes, we are for free trade agreements without too much politicization. We've seen a terrible politicization in the so-called European project, in the European integration. The European Union lost its way and its more and more planned economy in the old Moscow or Beijing style, with the climate as the first and the last thing to be mentioned. That's obviously a wrong way. You have to separate freedom, economic freedom and action from your political interest and from the interest of the big administration, big government, big parties who are running the economy or living at the expense of the economy and normal people's work, from the worker to the farmer, etc. This exploitation of of the citizens of many states. I'm just talking about the West now. Yeah, it's obvious and it has to be stopped. We don't need more policy and more politicians and more parties. What we need is less government and more reason.
Thank you so much, Mr. Whale. Very interesting ideas, thoughts, and of course we appreciate your visions, your joining us and contributing to the discussion. And of course I would like to wrap up here because we are running out of time, and in the future of course we would be very pleased to again to see you joining the Baku Network platform, where we discuss very hot, very interesting topics that are high on our agenda, on the agenda of European Union, Germany. So thank you very much, and we appreciate your contribution.
It was a great pleasure. Thank you and bye-bye. See you next time.
Bye-bye.